Hello, and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music, with me, your host, the 80s Mixtaper. In this episode, we'll be diving straight back into the second half of Playlist 9, the links to which for Apple Music and Spotify are in the episode description. Now, on that particular subject, I did a bit of a deep dive into all the podcast services which hold my podcast, and it's fair to say it's a mixed bag on which those links actually work. They should take you straight to the playlist on whichever music streaming platform you use, but I have noticed that, for example, on Spotify, it deletes the linkage. But suffice to say, if you go to Apple Music and Spotify and search for the playlists, they should appear. Or my podcast is actually hosted on Podbean, and if you go there, they will definitely appear. And I'm pleased to say we finally have some comments on the pod. As you know, I've been crying out for follows and comments so I can have a bit of a steer about what you folks like or dislike about the pod. And finally, some lovely people have piped up, so thank you. So firstly, Marla G on Spotify says, US here, catching up with these. Thanks for the music lessons. Miss the humour, but you do as you see. Thank you, Marla. Yes, that's still a burning question for me. For anyone new to the pod, up until episode 7, I used to present the podcast in a more sort of comical, Kenny Everett, pastiche way, but it did nothing to increase reviews or comments, so I put it down to experience and dropped the humour. Since then, I've been a lot more facts-based. But what do you, the people, want? Do you want the humour back? I'd love to know. Brewer Skew on YouTube says, great coverage of Styx. It was fitting you went from Herb Alpert to Styx. Herb's A&M Records signed Styx in 1975. Well, Brewer Skew, I'm old enough and ugly enough to admit that that was a pure fluke. So well done on spotting the link there. You did a better job than I did. And this is the sort of thing that I love on this show. If you have any history, any fandom, memories, corrections, praise or complaints, please do either drop a comment on the episode. I can see most of them on the major platforms, or get in touch at completed80s@aol.com, or find me on X or Instagram as the 80s Mixtaper. Anyway, let's get back to the music. In 1979, the Spinners, those smooth operators of soul from Detroit, who we met in episode 6.5, dropped Body Language, a track that oozes the disco fever of the era. On the 10th of May 1980, it entered the UK charts. This 6-minute and 26-second groove is the second cut on their album Dancing and Loving, a record that marked the group's foray into the disco scene. This is track 8, Playlist 9. Body Language was penned by the trio of Ed Fox, Frank Fuchs and Alan Roy Scott. The production helm was shared by the Spinners themselves, alongside Will Hatcher and Michael Zager, signalling a shift from their long-standing collaboration with the producer Tom Bell. This change was a strategic move to adapt to the modern, evolving musical landscape of the late 70s, embracing the pulsating rhythms and dance floor allure of disco, albeit possibly too late due to the ongoing disco burnout. The track showcases the Spinners' signature vocal harmonies, now infused with a disco flair. Think lush string arrangements, a thumping bass line, and an irresistible groove tailored for the dance floor. While Body Language didn't achieve significant chart success on its own, it contributed to the overall impact of Dancing and Loving, which climbed to number 11 on the R&B chart and peaked at number 32 on the Billboard 200. In the UK, it did less well, reaching number 40 on the charts in May 1980. And it's at this point we need to talk about the decline of a band which stemmed all the way from 1954, nearly 30 years back from then. The 1980s began promisingly for the Spinners. Their medley single, Working My Way Back to You, Forgive Me Girl from Dancing and Loving, became a massive hit. It topped the UK singles chart in April 1980 and peaked at number 2 on the US Billboard Hot 100. This clever fusion of a Four Seasons classic with their soulful sensibility showed their ability to reinterpret pop standards in fresh and innovative ways. Another medley single, Cupid, I've Loved You for a Long Time, released in 1980, also fared well, reaching number 4 on the US Billboard Hot 100. These successes demonstrated their enduring appeal, but as the decade progressed, their presence on the chart began to wane. As the disco era faded and the rise of synth-heavy pop and new wave defined the early to mid-80s, the Spinners struggled to maintain their foothold in the mainstream. Their lush, orchestrated soul sound, so emblematic of the 70s, faced stiff competition from the emerging sounds of the decade. Producers and audiences were shifting towards drum machines, synthesizers, and a more electronic approach to music. The group attempted to adapt to changing times, incorporating contemporary production styles into their music. Albums like Can't Shake This Feeling in 1981 and Grand Slam, which followed in 1982, leaned into funk and early 80s R&B influences, but they didn't replicate the commercial success of their earlier works. By this time, their frequent collaborations with producer Tom Bell, which had defined much of the 1970s output, had ended, further altering their sound. The Spinners continued to release albums throughout the decade, including Crossfire in 1984 and Lovin' Feelings in 1985. While these albums featured moments of brilliance, they struggled to find a large audience amid the rapidly evolving musical landscape. By the late 1980s, the Spinners had largely transitioned to the role of legacy performers. They focused on live performances, where their extensive catalogue of hits continued to draw audiences. Songs like I'll Be Around, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, and Then Came You remain staples of their live shows, ensuring their ongoing relevance to fans of classic soul and R&B. Let's move on to our next track. In the spring of 1980, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, or OMD, released Messages, a track that would become their first top 40 hit in the UK, peaking at number 13 on the UK singles chart. Originally featured on their self-titled debut album, Messages underwent a transformation before its single release. Dissatisfied with the initial album version, the band re-recorded the track under the guidance of producer Mike Howlett. This new rendition showcased a more polished sound, aligning with the burgeoning synth-pop movement of the era. This is track 9. I have a soft spot for Messages by OMD. It's by no means the best synth track or their best work, and Enola Gay is only a few episodes away. But if Sheena Easton's Modern Girl heralded the start of the 80s, then this song almost defines what the 80s becomes in terms of pop music. Let's break it down. The synths, they could literally be the demo setting from a Casio keyboard, if that's not too insulting to say. The tone is like you've just been bought the Casio for Christmas 1983 in the hope from your parents that you'll become a musical maestro, but will inevitably find the funniest, silliest setting like marimba. Then there's the production. It's warm, it's clean, it feels modern. And then we come to the vocals, not so much the lyrics, but the actual tone of Andy McCluskey's voice. Hottest of hot takes time, I think the 80s have a lyrical sound, as have the 1970s. The 70s sound was idiosyncratic, reedy. Think Squeeze, think Elvis Costello, think Thin Lizzy, think the Boomtown Rats. There's a style there to how those lyrics are presented. Or if it's not that, it's the odd vocal stylings like Sparks or even Roxy Music in the 70s. Now think 80s. OMD, U2, Duran Duran, Tears for Fears, Ultravox. It's more boyish, but it's richer, more emotive, with emotive flex at the end of words. And OMD kick it all off with Messages. This is not an important song in the grand scheme of things, but when you listen to all the male voices of the 80s, all those that are to come, Messages is the first song where we hear that 80s lyrical tone. Or maybe I've just gone mad. The song's lyrics delve into the emotional turmoil of receiving letters from a former lover, capturing the tension between lingering attachment and the desire to move on. The opening line, "It worries me, this kind of thing," sets a contemplative tone, while the refrain, "Coded messages, poisoned letters," reflects the persistent reminders of past relationships. Musically, Messages is distinguished by its melodic synth lines and military-style percussion. Paul Humphreys, one half of the OMD duo, manually played the bass and snare drums, contributing to the track's distinctive rhythm. The single's release was accompanied by a performance on BBC's Top of the Pops, marking OMD's debut on the programme. This exposure played a significant role in propelling the song up the charts, solidifying the band's presence in the UK music scene. OMD formed in 1978 in the Wirral, England. The band began as a project between childhood friends Andy McCluskey and Paul Humphreys. Initially, they were inspired by the emerging punk scene, but quickly pivoted to more experimental sounds, drawn to the possibilities of electronic music. The duo was heavily influenced by Kraftwerk and the work of David Bowie, blending these inspirations with their own ideas about synthesizers and unconventional song structures. By 1979, OMD had expanded to a full band, including Malcolm Holmes on drums and Martin Cooper on keyboards and saxophone. Their sound was already evolving, moving towards a more electronic and synthesized direction. Their early tracks were largely built on rudimentary synthesizers and drum machines, reflecting the DIY ethos of the late 70s. Their debut single, Electricity, released in 1979 on the Factory Records label, was a bold statement of intent, minimal, atmospheric, and full of jittery energy. It didn't make a big commercial impact at first, but was enough to establish the band within the UK's underground scene. The single was notably produced by the legendary engineer-producer Mike Howlett, who would go on to work with them on Messages and other tracks. After Electricity, OMD began to garner more attention, particularly for their live performances and their progressive, technology-driven approach to music. They quickly became part of the new wave of British bands embracing synthesizer-heavy new wave sounds. It was their self-titled debut album, released in 1980, that solidified their place in the new wave pantheon. The album was filled with experimental electronic tracks, but Messages stood out as the most commercially accessible. Released as a single in February 1980, Messages not only brought OMD their first taste of chart success, but also marked the moment when they began to transcend their initial niche as an experimental act and become one of the defining voices of the synth-pop movement. The re-recording of the track for single release was a smart move that sharpened the song's sound, making it both radio-friendly and reflective of the synth-heavy soundscapes that would dominate the early 80s. Messages became a top 40 hit in the UK, peaking at number 13, and introduced a wider audience to OMD's sound, a blend of catchy, melodic synth-pop and moody, introspective lyrics. It was a crucial moment in the band's trajectory, setting the stage for further success with albums like Architecture and Morality in 1981 and Dazzle Ships in 1983. Messages has been lauded for its haunting melody and emotional depth. Critics have noted the song's gentle touch and masterly restraint, with interlocking melodic ideas and vocal delivery that set it apart from contemporaneous releases. Over the years, Messages has remained a staple in OMD's live performances, resonating with audiences and influencing a generation of electronic musicians. Its legacy endures as a testament to the band's innovative spirit during the early days of synth-pop. Next up, we're talking about a song behind a unique cultural phenomenon. Suicide is Painless, the hauntingly serene theme from the film and television series MASH, stands as a testament to the peculiar alchemy of melancholy and melody. Composed by Johnny Mandel with lyrics by Michael Altman, the song's journey from a cinematic piece to a chart-topping single in the UK is as compelling as the tune itself. This is track 10, Playlist 9. Before penning Suicide is Painless, Johnny Mandel had already etched his name into the annals of American music. Born in 1925, Mandel's early years were steeped in jazz, playing the trumpet and trombone with the likes of Jimmy Dorsey and Buddy Rich. His transition to arranging and composing showcased his versatility, leading to collaborations with legends such as Frank Sinatra and Peggy Lee. By the time director Robert Altman approached him for MASH, Mandel was garnering acclaim for his film scores, including The Sandpiper, which featured the Oscar-winning song The Shadow of Your Smile. MASH, both as a film and a television series, became a cultural touchstone of the 1970s and 80s. Celebrated for its razor-sharp satire and poignant exploration of war's human cost, the series' unique blend of dark humour and emotional depth resonated with audiences worldwide, particularly during the Vietnam War era when anti-war sentiment was at its height. The ensemble cast, led by Alan Alda as the witty yet compassionate Hawkeye Pierce, brought authenticity and relatability to their roles, cementing MASH as both a critical and commercial success. Its ability to balance levity with heartbreak made it stand out in the golden age of television, a status reaffirmed by its enduring popularity in syndication, including, eventually, to the UK. In 1969, tasked with creating a song for MASH, Mandel was given two directives by Altman. The song had to be titled Suicide is Painless, and it needed to be, quote, the stupidest song ever written. Finding the latter requirement challenging, Mandel enlisted Altman's 15-year-old son Michael to craft the lyrics. Remarkably, Michael delivered the poignant words in just 5 minutes. The song's gentle melody, juxtaposed with its somber lyrics, created a haunting irony that resonated deeply with audiences. It also made the main theme tune, and while Robert Altman only made $70,000 for directing the movie, his son made $1 million for co-writing the song. While Suicide is Painless was introduced to audiences in 1970, it wasn't until a decade later that the song experienced a resurgence in popularity. In May 1980, it ascended to the pinnacle of the UK singles chart, securing the #1 position. This unexpected revival can be attributed to the BBC's decision to broadcast the MASH television series during that period, rekindling interest in the show's theme song. The instrumental version used in the TV series, combined with the song's evocative title, captivated the British public, leading to its chart-topping success. MASH struck a chord with UK audiences in 1980, despite its earlier release in the United States. Several factors contributed to this delayed yet profound impact. The show's exploration of the absurdities and tragedies of war resonated universally, transcending cultural boundaries. The BBC's decision to air MASH during a period of renewed interest in anti-war narratives aligned with the public's sentiments, amplifying its appeal. The show's blend of dark humour and drama mirrored the British appreciation for satire and nuanced storytelling, fostering a deep connection with viewers. Following the renewed success of Suicide is Painless, Johnny Mandel continued to contribute significantly to the world of music. He'd composed scores for films such as Being There, a brilliant film, by the way, in 1979, The Verdict in 1982, further cementing his reputation as a master composer. Mandel's ability to evoke deep emotion through his compositions ensured his enduring influence in both jazz and film music circles. Suicide is Painless remains an iconic piece of music history, reflecting the complexities of its time and the genius of its creators. Johnny Mandel's composition, paired with Michael Altman's incisive lyrics, created a song that transcends its origins, continuing to evoke reflection and admiration decades after its inception. Next up, we're getting into one of the funkiest songs of 1980, an absolute classic which has made it onto the silver screens in the likes of Shrek 2, for example. 1980 was the year Lips Inc. released the infectious dance anthem, Funky Town. This track didn't just ask us to take me to Funky Town, it practically dragged us onto the dance floor, whether we were ready or not. This is track 11. Lips Inc. or Lip Sync. A brainchild of Minneapolis musician and producer Steven Greenberg, was a studio project that featured the powerhouse vocals of Cynthia Johnson. Greenberg, who had been a wedding DJ, wanted to try his hands at writing disco songs. He had intended to use the name Lip Sync, but it was in use by another band, so instead he chose the homophone Lips Inc. Johnson, a former Miss Black Minnesota, brought a dynamic presence to the group. Funky Town was released in March 1980 as the second single from their debut album, Mouth to Mouth. The song is a shimmering blend of disco, funk and synth-pop, embodying the Minneapolis sound that would later be popularized by artists like Prince. Its lyrics express a yearning for a metaphorical place that will keep me moving, keep me grooving, with some energy, reflecting Greenberg's desire to relocate from Minneapolis to a more vibrant music scene. The track's infectious groove and irresistible hook propelled it to the top of the charts worldwide. In the United States, Funky Town spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 from May the 31st to June the 21st, 1980. It also topped the Disco Top 60 for 4 non-consecutive weeks and peaked at number 2 on the Hot Soul Singles chart. The single was certified gold by the RIAA on May the 23rd, 1980. And later platinum on July the 17th, 1980. Internationally, it reached number 1 in countries including Australia, France and West Germany, and peaked at number 2 in the United Kingdom. Despite the massive success of Funky Town, Lip Sync struggled to replicate its impact with subsequent releases. Their follow-up single, a cover of Ace's How Long, achieved moderate success, reaching number 4 on the US dance chart in 1981. However, the group never again reached the heights of their breakout hit. After releasing their final album, 4, in 1983, Lip Sync disbanded 2 years later. Funky Town has become a cultural touchstone, featuring in numerous films, commercials, and even video games. Its enduring appeal lies in its ability to encapsulate the exuberance and escapism of the disco era in just a few moments of pure, unadulterated groove. Funky Town belongs in our 80s pantheon just for its just pure joyous energy and as a demonstration of what the burgeoning 80s funk scene could turn out. It's one of my favourite songs of the year, and I'm sure that's a feeling replicated by many others, despite Lip Sync being a one-hit wonder, proving all you need is one good song. Next up, in 1980, Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway gifted the world Back Together Again, a soulful anthem that would become a cornerstone of their collaborative legacy due to tragedy. This track, penned by the dynamic duo of James Mtume and Reggie Lucas, who had previously crafted the 1978 Flack Hathaway hit The Closer I Get to You, showcased the seamless blend of Flack's emotive delivery and Hathaway's rich vocals. This is track 12. Before becoming one of music's most beloved duos, Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway had already established themselves as towering talents in the world of soul and R&B. Born in Black Mountain, North Carolina in 1937, Roberta Flack was a musical prodigy who began playing piano at the age of 9. Her early immersion in classical music heavily influenced her nuanced and emotive style. Flack attended Howard University on a full music scholarship, where she excelled in classical piano before transitioning to teaching music. However, it was her powerful yet understated performances at Washington, D.C. clubs that caught the attention of Atlantic Records. Her breakthrough came in 1969 with the release of First Take, featuring the Grammy-winning hit The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. Flack's career blossomed in the 1970s with a string of iconic hits, including Killing Me Softly with his song, which earned her another Grammy and cemented her place as a pioneer of sophisticated, introspective soul music. Donny Hathaway, born in Chicago in 1945 and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, also showed exceptional musical ability from an early age. Dubbed the Young Genius, Hathaway was heavily influenced by gospel music, performing with his church choir before attending Howard University on a scholarship, where he met Roberta Flack. His professional career began as a songwriter and session musician, working for Curtis Mayfield's Curtain label, among others. Hathaway's 1970 debut album, Everything is Everything, introduced his ability to blend gospel roots with socially conscious themes and lush arrangements. Hits like A Song for You and This Christmas solidified his reputation as a deeply emotive performer and a masterful arranger. Flack and Hathaway first collaborated in 1972 on their self-titled duets album, which featured classics like Where is the Love and earned them another Grammy. Their voices, contrasting yet complementary, created a magnetic chemistry that audiences couldn't resist. The success of their early collaborations naturally led to plans for a follow-up album. By the time Back Together Again was released, both artists had carved out enduring legacies. Hathaway, unfortunately, struggled with mental health issues, which interrupted his career and deeply affected those around him. Despite these challenges, he and Flack reunited in the studio to record what would tragically be one of their final duets, including this 1980 gem. Donny Hathaway tragically died on January 13th, 1979, at the age of only 33. He fell from the 15th floor of the Essex House Hotel in New York City in what was ruled as suicide. Hathaway had long struggled with mental health issues, including a severe case of paranoid schizophrenia. His condition had worsened over the years, leading to erratic behaviour and strained relationships with those close to him, including Roberta Flack. Despite treatment, Hathaway's illness was a constant battle. On the day of his death, Hathaway had been in the studio working with Flack on their duets for the album Roberta Flack featuring Donny Hathaway. The session went well, and Flack later described Hathaway as appearing upbeat and engaged. However, later that evening, Hathaway was found dead outside the hotel. Back Together Again resonated deeply with audiences, particularly in the UK, where it soared to number 3 on the singles chart in May 1980. In the US, the track reached number 56 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 8 on the R&B chart, and number 6 on the dance chart, reflecting its widespread appeal across different listener demographics. The production of Back Together Again was enriched by the contributions of notable musicians. The backing vocals featured arrangements by Gwen Guthrie and Luther Vandross, adding layers of depth to the track's harmonious blend. The lyrics of Back Together Again celebrate the resilience of love and the joy of reunion, themes that are timeless and universally relatable. The chorus, with its uplifting declaration, encapsulates the song's essence. You and I, back together again, got the world in a spin, love will last forever. This song stands as a testament to the enduring musical chemistry between Flack and Hathaway, capturing a moment in time when their talents converged to create something truly special, despite the eventual tragedy. Our final track today is by Thin Lizzy, the Irish rock band fronted by the charismatic Phil Lynott, and from their 10th studio album, Chinatown. It's the title track. The album marked a period of transition for the band, introducing guitarist Snowy White, who had previously collaborated with Pink Floyd, and the young keyboardist Darren Wharton. Here's Chinatown. Thin Lizzy were a force of a band. Formed in Dublin in 1969, Thin Lizzy broke the mould of traditional rock with their electric fusion of hard rock, blues and folk influences. Fronted by the indomitable Phil Lynott, one of rock's first black frontmen in a predominantly white genre, Thin Lizzy delivered music steeped in storytelling, raw emotion and unmistakable swagger. Lynott, the band's bassist and primary songwriter, infused their music with themes of Irish folklore, streetwise toughness and heartfelt vulnerability. Their breakout hit, Whiskey in the Jar in 1973, an electrified take on a traditional Irish folk song, set the stage for their rise. Yet, it was their 1976 album Jailbreak, featuring the smash hit The Boys Are Back in Town, that catapulted them to international fame. The song became an anthem for rebellion and camaraderie, powered by the band's signature twin guitar harmonies, a sound pioneered by Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson. Thin Lizzy were always evolving. Their lineup saw various changes, with guitar virtuosos like Gary Moore and Snowy White contributing to their legacy. Despite the turnover, Lynott's vision remained the band's anchor. Albums like Bad Reputation in 1977 and Black Rose, A Rock Legend 1979 continue to showcase their knack for balancing grit with melody. By 1980, as they prepared to release Chinatown, Thin Lizzy had become a symbol of resilience and innovation in the rock world. While their later years were marked by challenges, including Lynott's health struggles, the band's spirit never wavered. Thin Lizzy's influence resonates deeply across rock, inspiring countless artists with their melodic brilliance and Lynott's poetic soul. The title track, Chinatown, was released as a single and showcased the band's signature blend of hard rock infused with melodic hooks. The song's lyrics paint a vivid picture of urban life, with lines like, "In Chinatown you better look round, man you don't stand a chance if you go down in Chinatown." This narrative reflects Lynott's knack for storytelling, capturing the gritty essence of city streets. Upon its release, Chinatown reached number 21 on the UK singles chart, demonstrating the band's continued appeal. The album itself climbed to number 7 on the UK albums chart, further cementing Thin Lizzy's status in the rock scene. The addition of Snowy White brought a new dynamic to the band's sound. White's blues-influenced guitar work complemented Scott Gorham's style, creating a dual guitar harmony that became a hallmark of Thin Lizzy's music during this era. Darren Wharton's introduction added depth to the band's arrangements, with his keyboard contributions becoming more prominent in subsequent releases. Despite the internal changes and the evolving music landscape of the early 80s, Thin Lizzy managed to produce a track that resonated with both longtime fans and new listeners. Chinatown stands as a testament to the band's resilience and adaptability, capturing a moment in time when they were navigating the challenges of lineup changes and the pressures of the music industry. In retrospect, Chinatown may not be the most commercially successful single in Thin Lizzy's discography, but it encapsulates a pivotal period for the band. The song reflects their commitment to evolving their sound while staying true to the rock roots that had garnered them acclaim throughout the 1970s. As we listen to Chinatown today, we're reminded of Thin Lizzy's unique ability to blend storytelling with compelling musicality, a combination that continues to influence artists across genres. Thanks for joining us again on I Completed 80s Music. Join us next time in Playlist 10 for some more great tunes, this time from the Corgis, Gary Newman, Tina Marie, Hoyt Axton, Judas Priest, the Hollies and Bad Manners. Keep those comments coming in, I really appreciate it. Until next time, take care.